room?
Yeah, yeah.
Any, go ahead.
Sure. My question is, what are some metrics or how do you evaluate opportunities at this point? Because I'm sure there's an abundance.
Yeah.
And there's problems everywhere. So how
Yeah.
do you evaluate, opportunity?
Yeah. You mean as an investor or as an entrepreneur? Or both?
Would be valuable.
Both? Okay. Yeah. As an investor, one key metric would be traction. And traction is a function of a couple of things. Traction is how much progress have you made given how long you've been doing it. So if you launched a product, a website, and an iOS app, and you got 100,000 customers, and you did it in 3 months, where do I sign on that one, right? Because you've obviously demonstrated that as an entrepreneur that you can deliver. And that's really what investors, those of you who are interested in raising some capital, ultimately it's about your ability to transfer confidence to the person giving you the money that you can deliver on what you say. I will have a product launched in 6 months. I will have the first 10,000 customers in 9 months. And maybe you miss. Maybe there's some margin of error. But if you can transfer that confidence and do what you deliver on what you say, that's what investors want. That's why they invest in you. Then I would say a second metric besides traction is customer lifetime value. That's an important one. There are a lot of different ways that I could have said that, but let's just keep it to customer lifetime value. Is this a business where each customer has a greater than $0 value associated with their engagement on your product? And it obviously should be greater than 0. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself, out of business very quickly as you scale. But what is that number? Can you try to figure that out? Like, hey, if somebody comes to my service, they'll buy once, and it's a $5 buy. But maybe they'll want to come back. Maybe they'll visit the repeat. We hope that the frequency is that they come back 3 times a year. So really, their annual value to us, each customer, is $15, right? There are many ways that you can, depending on your business. So I think the second metric that I look at as both an entrepreneur and as an investor is what is the customer lifetime value of each user. And that's where you see a lot of variance. The third sort of metric, but although it's a soft metric, like it's hard to measure it with a number, is sort of team mojo. It's a strength of the team. There are good teams and there are bad teams, and you know it when you see it. And bad can be the result of incompetence, lacking skill, but it can also be bad if you've got a lot of really brilliant and skilled and talented people, but they don't communicate well, or they're not. They just don't communicate well, or they don't fight well. And I think another thing that I'll sort of veer off a little bit, if I may, that is a critical success factor in entrepreneurship, is that you pick someone, a co-founder or co-founders, and you treat it like it's getting married. Give it more thought than how you picked your spouse. Believe me, I'm both married and I have co-founders, and I will tell you that you are going to feel much more interdependent with your co-founder, for better or for worse, than sometimes your spouse. And you better pick someone who's a co-founder, who's not only technically competent or if your co-founder is a marketer, somebody who's great at marketing. They need to index high in their functional area of expertise, but they also need to be someone that you can have a fight with, and it's okay afterwards. They don't flip the bit on you and don't talk to you for 3 months, right? That the communication is, you need to be able to sit down with this person and be like, hey, it was a little rough this morning, I'm really sorry about that. Can we have a cup of coffee, right? And then half hour later, it's like, that's good, and you're talking again and you're solving problems again. I honestly can't underscore enough the importance of this as a critical success factor for your startup. That's why startups blow up. I don't have the actual statistics, but anecdotally, looking across the ecosystem, it's when people fail to work well together is when things blow up. So I would say that's the third sort of metric I look for is how strong is the team, and strength can sometimes be a function of how well they communicate and work out problems.
Another question? I'll give you one. I was wondering, like, when the opportunity came to be acquired by Google, like, how did you make that decision that,
It was a very
I
tough
was going to
decision.
sell? Or
Yeah, it was a very tough decision because we really felt that we had the tiger by the tail and it was going up and up and up. And this, I have to say, is a lot of personal things factored into it. 2 out of the 3 founders of Picnic, myself included and one other co-founder, had always looked at our lives. We'd always described it this way to each other, as happening in 5-year chapters. And I think this is it's a really lovely realization that it's about personal growth. It's about, we're not here a long time, and therefore spend this time well. Learn new skills. Hey, if you've been doing photos, go do a news site. Go do GeekWire, right? Or do, both Mike and I felt that there was a lot of value that we had created with Picnic. I think it had gone to 60 million visitors a month. That's officially large. And it may, it may not have been 60 at the time that we sold it, but it got there at some point afterwards, shortly after. It might have been 40 or 45 or something. But that's a lot of value, and we thought, you know what, it's time to capture this value,
right.
take the money off the table, move on to the next thing, learn some new things. So that was an important consideration. I think a lot about sometimes to go to the next level, your idea, you need a bigger stage. So that was another reason that we considered selling. Hey, going to Google would allow us to be on that bigger stage. And we could be integrated with Picasso, integrated with what became Google Plus and all of that stuff, which all of that stuff happened. That was cool.
Can I ask you, like did you
Yeah.
do the happy dance? Like that, like, tell me about that moment. Like, did they call you? Did they email you?
Yeah.
Or had you approached them? Did you pitch them? Like, how did it happen?
All of the above. The reality is that if you put yourself in play, these things come together very quickly. It's almost like how you might imagine like a molecule forming all of a sudden. It's like all these separate parts, and all of a sudden they're like, they just kind of, the charges get, pulled together. We had been, with Google in particular, 2 years prior, I invited the engineering director of their photos team, who was from Seattle. I didn't know him, really. I didn't know him at all. But I knew that he was from Seattle originally and then moved down to the Bay Area to work at Google. And we had a mutual friend, and somehow I was able to get in contact with him, and I sent him an email. And I said, Ken, I would love for you to, I'd love the work that you're doing at Google. I know that you're managing the photos team. Would love to show you what we're doing. He came out. Nothing came of it. This was early days. Again, putting yourself into play. You don't know what may happen or exact path, but at least you establish this relationship. Okay. I'm at a place where I was having breakfast on the weekend, Cafe Flora in Madison Park.
Right.
I get up, I walk to the men's room, I pass a table where an old colleague that I'd worked with at Microsoft, Katie, was sitting. I go, Katie, I haven't seen you in a couple of years. Where have you been? Do you even live in Seattle anymore? You're at Google. Cool. All right. Katie asks, Jonathan, what are you doing? You're not at Microsoft anymore, right? No, I'm doing a startup, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, in fact, I talked with Ken Ong. I talked with him about, that was his name. Ken, it was Ken, but I talked with Ken, and I think it was great. I got to know him. I got to understand a little bit better, and so again, there's another molecule or piece of the puzzle coming together, right? I get an email from Trade Business Cards. I get an email from her a week later, going, "Hey, you know what? Bumped into Ken. He kind of likes you guys. Why don't you? I have another idea. I have another group down here at Google that's not in the photos area, but they sort of want to talk to you and at least understand your concept, right? So if you put yourself in a position where they can have conversations about you, that's a really good thing. And so to make a long story short, then I think I went down and had meetings. And still, it wasn't until 2 years later that it all came together. That then there was another fellow named Brian who used the site and loved it and thought it was cool. And then it was like, oh, well, you guys already kind of have a relationship and you know Ken already. Yeah, let's talk, right? And so I go down there, and I'll never forget that I had 3 meetings scheduled. They were all in the Bay Area. I was going to make the most of my day. I was going to meet with Google at the beginning of the day. Then I was going to take a Caltrain down to the city to meet with Adobe. Adobe had an office. They had a couple of offices there, one in Santa Clara, but I was going into one in the city. And then there was a third meeting. Maybe it was like with Shutterfly. I had to go out to Oakland, I think.
Right.
And I never made it to the third meeting.